As everybody starts loading up, it looks like everybody's mics are starting to populate. So hopefully you can hear me. My name is Adam. This is day 3 of our week of workshops. I'm not sure how many of us have been in my workshops for every day, but we're offering a variety of workshops this week through the rest of the week. And this is going to be the second workshop specifically on Intro to Cybersecurity. We'll be doing another one tomorrow. That's also a lesson deep dive. Today's lesson deep dive is an unplugged activity. So nothing today requires the range. Just to kind of lay the groundwork on that. My name is Adam Topher. I have presenting with me today Ben Rich. We will have our emails up later in case you guys need to contact us. Do you want to move to the next one, Ben? So just to introduce myself, I guess some of you, if you've been here more than once, you're gonna know me pretty well. My name is again Adam Topher. I've been with Cyber.org for about 1.5 years. I taught in the classroom for about 6 years. I was in Japan for 2 years teaching English. I came back to America and initially got a job teaching English, and then I eventually moved to Texas and got a job teaching tech with a specialization in networking. I was in industry. I was a network admin and a server admin, which is how I ended up with that job in Texas. Someone had called me and just kind of told me about it because I didn't even know that that was an opportunity that was available. I had not had much background in CTE as far as in school. I love anything having to do with radio frequencies. I'm a ham operator. I love remote control cars. In my picture there, I have one that I built with my dad whenever I was a kid in the early 90s. And then the other one I just recently built with my son, who's 4 now. And so that's just a little background on me. I'd love for Ben, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Welcome, everyone. I am Ben Rich. I am in the process of retiring from the United States Air Force. I've been with Cyber.org for a few months now, and my background in the Air Force is in cybersecurity. And before that, I was a middle school teacher, and I taught computers in Nevada back in the early 2000s. And how I would have loved back then to have access to the resources that are available to all of you for free via Cyber.org. So today we're going to tell you about some of those. So what we're going to talk about today in this workshop is we're going to give you a little bit of a taste of some of our curriculum from the Intro to Cybersecurity course that's available for free on the website. We're going to cover a couple of activities that you might do in an unplugged style environment. That's kind of the theme of today's lessons. And that is, you might not always have access to a full computer laboratory or computers for each child. So in a situation where you don't want to have the students on the lab, we have activities that are designed to be done just with paper in the classroom or with limited access to computing resources, just a few devices or the like. So that's what we're going to be doing today, even though we're doing it virtually. So we'll do our best to try to demonstrate what that would be like for you in the classroom. We're going to cover one lesson related to distributed denial of service attacks and one lesson related to a cybersecurity incident that happened in real life and examine that in groups. Then we'll go to breakout for that, and then we'll kind of sum it up and go over a Q&A. So that's an overview of what we're going to be covering today. So go ahead, Adam.
So I was going to ask if you could put in chat if you're a high school or a middle school teacher, because this particular course is good for, we generally say 8th through 12th grade. I would say 7th grade, you're probably okay too. But in general, if you don't mind just popping in the chat and putting whether you're a high school or a middle school teacher, we always love to know kind of who we're talking to and where your specialization is. Personally, I taught middle and high school, so I know what it's like to also be in both areas. Do you want me to present this part, Ben, or do you want to?
I'll go ahead and get started, and then we'll transition to you for the activities.
So you want to move to the next one? So does everybody know what the denial of service attack is? I see Corey works middle school and high school. I can appreciate the work that you do, having to work in both of those. It's a lot, especially when you're working with 2 different principals. So a denial of service attack is something that prevents a system or server from functioning perfectly, right? Making pretty much it unavailable to perform its normal day-to-day duties. So you can imagine an attacker sending a whole bunch of packets or a whole bunch of data to a single web server, and then the server just becomes unavailable. We hear a lot about these on the internet, maybe not these days, but we used to hear about them a lot. I think they do still happen. One that was really famous was PlayStation. PlayStation Online went down, and so you couldn't access it, and it was due to a denial of service attack. And that was been quite a few years back. Go ahead and go to the next one. Um, so a distributed denial of service attack is a little bit different in that a attacker is using a controller or some kind of controller for bots, or sometimes they're called zombies, to attack a single victim. So instead of one person sending multiple attacks, they're using lots of what we typically call bots or to attack a single person. So this makes a much more powerful attack, what we call a coordinated attack, to create a traffic spike in a single system. The zombies are computer systems that are unaware that they're even part of a system. And a lot of times, I'm trying to think of an example, but I can't think of one off the top of my head. They'll use a botnet from something like an IoT device. Like you might have no idea that your refrigerator or your thermostat in your house has been taken over and used in a botnet attack. And IoT devices, if not properly secured, can be a really big proponent of this type of attack. And one popular activity that we have in our course, our Intro to Cybersecurity course, is this kind of attack where we have a lot of different zombies, as you could say, all attacking a single victim. And we like to do it with ping pong balls. Or if you don't want to go out and purchase ping pong balls, you can do it with just little balls of paper. And what students don't love to throw balls of paper at someone, right? So it's just as simple as getting a single piece of paper, balling it up, and then throwing it at someone. And it's very simple because you want the person who is the victim to catch it, or the defender to catch that ball of paper and then toss it back to the attacker. That's how essentially traffic between a user and a web server works, right? The web server is going to get the packet and they're going to send it back to you. The information is traveling as it should. So then if you have two students who are both throwing a ball of paper at the web server, the defender, probably that person can take two pieces of paper and then send both of those pieces of paper back. It gets even more complicated if you label all these things so you know exactly who they're coming from and who they're going back to. So they're not throwing the wrong ball to the wrong person, because then the traffic isn't going where it should be, right? But imagine if you have a class of 20 students and 20 students are each throwing a ball to one person, and that person has to then return all 20 of those balls. It becomes very difficult. Now imagine if 20 students each had 5 balls and they all were throwing them at the same time, not 5 balls, but one at a time, 5 balls to this victim. There's just no way that victim could return all those balls to those students. We did this at EdCon recently. If you happen to be there, in a room full of attendees, and it got pretty crazy. we brought all the ping pong balls there. We put people in groups of like 5 or 6 with one defender. And it was pretty funny to watch everybody, all the teachers having a great time with the ping pong balls. So I got to thinking, how can we replicate this in a virtual environment? For us here doing this, or like even if you're a teacher in a virtual environment, how can you throw ping pong balls or balls of paper back and forth at each other? And so that's what we're going to do here today. We're going to use essentially Post-it notes on a Jamboard. So if you have your phone, you can follow the QR code, or you can follow this URL on your computer, and it's going to take you to a Jamboard that I've created. And if you wait a moment, we're going to pick someone to be the defender, and then everyone else is going to be the attackers. So for a moment, we're basically going to try and put sticky notes on the defender's side, and then we're going to show what's going on. So I'm going to share, if I can take over the share, Ben, what you should be seeing. So this is what you should see on your screen. And unfortunately, Jamboard is going away. So we're going to have to find a new way to do this later. But for now, it should work pretty well. So I do see a few people are logged in. And I hopefully have enough sticky notes for everybody. It looks like we have currently 14 of us here. So yeah, we've got plenty of sticky notes. It doesn't really matter what color you pick or what sticky note you pick. What I do need is one defender. Can I get someone to type in chat as a willing sacrifice to be our defender, if you don't mind? Okay. Okay, so Irsan, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Irsan, if you don't mind. Oh, really? It's view only. Hmm. I can reshare it, but I thought I had fixed that. Let me try. What I have to do is I have to reshare the link. Um, you're right. It is. Okay. I'm gonna put a new link in the chat, which means that the QR code is not gonna work. I apologize. See, I actually tested this, but I guess I shared the wrong link. Um, but maybe the QR code didn't get updated. I'm not really sure. So I do apologize that the first link we shared was view only. But the link in chat should allow you to edit, which means that you can actually move the uh, sticky notes. So Ersan, if you don't mind, like I said, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. What I want you to do is on the defender side, every sticky note that comes over to you, I want you to try and put it back on the attacker side. Does that make sense? And everybody else is going to try and put sticky notes on your side. So if you're one of the attackers, basically, if you're anybody but Ersan, your goal is to put the sticky notes on the side where it's the defender. And then Ersan is just going to take them and try and put them back. And we're going to do that for about, I guess, maybe a minute, because I think anything longer than that is going to get too crazy. So I say if we're ready, we can just 3, 2, 1, start. Is everybody ready? Can I get a couple of thumbs up or maybe some okays? And then we'll, yep. Okay, I see I see a thumbs up from Ben. Yes. Okay. I say let's get started. So we go 3, 2, 1, and go. Ooh, boy, there's a lot of sticky notes. Yeah. So you can see kind of how quickly this thing becomes overloaded, right? And that's only with 13 people trying to overload him or overload them. Sorry. Uh, okay. So I would say at this point we can go ahead and stop. Otherwise, we're just gonna have a whole lot of sticky notes, right? Yeah, it's too much. So you can see very quickly how a denial of service attack can ruin a web server, and that's with only, like I said, only 13 people attacking a system. So you can imagine a botnet of say 200 or 300 bots attacking one web server. It could very quickly get overloaded. Um, so hopefully this was interesting. There are lots of different ways to do this in your classroom. You can imagine students having fun with ping pong balls or little wads of paper. So hopefully this will be useful to you in the classroom. You could also replicate it this way with the sticky notes. If you don't mind, do me a favor. Let's all work together. Let's put the sticky notes back on the other side because we're going to come back here. Or actually, we don't need this later, right, Ben? We have a different way to vote. I said we could vote with this, but we're going to do something else. You don't have to worry about it. We can get back in the PowerPoint. So I'm going to stop my share, and then we can go back into our PowerPoint. Let me go my Zoom. Okay, so I think I'm going to take over. Yes. Okay. Okay. So today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about the trial of eternal blue. That's the main purpose of today's PD. The denial of service attack was just kind of something to have a little bit of fun and kind of get everybody warmed up for the day. If you're not familiar with the trial of eternal blue, it was talking about who is responsible when a cyber weapon spreads across the globe, causing human suffering and economic disaster. And there were 4 key groups associated with this. We want to talk about 3 key questions. Well, 4 key questions. What group do we blame? Do we blame a group who created it? Do we blame a group that distributed it? Or do we blame the group that aimed it at victims and pulled the trigger? Just to be sure, can everybody see my PowerPoint? Thumbs up? Yeah, okay. And now the 4 key groups, the US NSA, this we call the equation group, right? So this is our USA's home turf. These are one of the groups in the background. The shadow brokers, this is another group. We have the North Korean Lazarus group, and then the Russian Sanron group. And they all played a very important key part in this. In this lesson, there is a video that we provide. Hold on. There's a video that we provide that has a lot of background on how this all worked. Was everybody able to hear that audio? Yes, no? If you can't hear the audio, then the video is not going to do much good. Did it come through, Ben? No, Corey didn't hear the audio. Okay, well, so the video
you
is
didn't play
definitely
it long enough for me to tell.
Oh, okay. It started auto playing, so I didn't know if it was going to actually come through or not. I'll try playing it again and we'll see what happens. Okay, well, I'm just going to explain for a second. So the video is actually quite long, but it's been cut down to 11 minutes to play in the classroom. And it goes into details on each one of the groups. So I want to play just a few key parts because I don't want to go into the whole video. And then we'll see if the audio comes through. So I'm going to play it and let me know if the audio actually comes through. Uh-oh.
Sorry, no audio.
Okay. Okay, so if there's no audio, then that's not going to work. So what we can talk about is a little background on each of these. The US Equation Group, they helped to, they basically created this backdoor. And the backdoor was, I'm going to back out of this.
Would you like me to give it the video one try, Adam?
You can, yeah. See what happens.
Okay.
I'm gonna stop presenting.
Okay.
Sorry, I guess I never tried to play an audio and see what happens.
Okay, let me know if it works.
These 3 video clips will give us the background story on Eternal Blue before we start our trial.
What made that May 2017 version so
Just
much
tell me when you'd like me to stop.
was 2 new pieces of code called Eternal Blue and Double Pulsar. Pieces of code called Eternal Blue and Double Pulsar, another couple of weird virus names, but these ones are really important. Previously, the hackers would have to send their viruses to victims, usually by email, and then trick them into opening them, clicking on links, which is what happened at Sony and Bangladesh Bank. Eternal Blue and Double Pulsar do away with that. Eternal Blue automatically spreads the virus from computer to computer, no more having to send out emails, and Double Pulsar automatically triggers the virus when it arrives on a new computer. No need to get your victims to click. This is new and it's terrifying. In the cybersecurity world, we call this an exploit. It's a piece of software that takes advantage of a bug or a vulnerability. In this case, the Microsoft Windows vulnerability that allowed computers to automatically share files, including viruses.
And guess what? These particular exploits weren't created by criminal hackers. It appears they were the work of the U.S. National Security Agency.
Governments are going to discover vulnerabilities in software and are going to develop exploits for them. We might not like it, and we don't like it when our adversaries do that,
Priscilla Moriucci is a cybersecurity researcher. She's a fellow at Harvard. But before that, she spent 12 years with the National Security Agency, and she explains that the US government routinely develops its own cyber weapons, but that they have procedures in place to keep them as safe as they can.
So basically, if the US government finds a problem with computers or flaw in computers, they could use that flaw for a bit to stage attacks, but they eventually have to sort of say, look, this is what we found. Feel free to go ahead and fix it.
Yeah, so they have to make an assessment, right, when they discover a vulnerability and are able to develop an exploit for it. So they have to go through a process right across, the intelligence community and the military, where different agencies get to weigh in and say, like, hey, it's not worth it, right, to keep this from the public, or it is worth it.
This is murky territory. If the world was a lovely, fluffy place, then as soon as the government found out about a tech vulnerability, they'd share that information with everyone so we could all be protected. But the world
Okay,
isn't
pause
like
it.
that. Government hackers
Fast forward to 417 are about that area. So that, because now you've heard a little bit about the NSA group, and I think the next part they talk a little bit about launching it. I think North Korea, they talk about that area.
I've been part of this process, Adam.
Reason why the FBI and other US agencies were so keen to put a lot of resources into finding out who was responsible.
By the summer of 2017, British authorities make it known that they believed North Korea was behind the WannaCry attack.
Hello and welcome to BBC News. A fast-moving wave of huge cyber attacks has swept the globe, affecting computers in thousands of locations.
NHS Blackpool Clinical Commission Group says all patients should avoid contacting GPs or using hospital services unless absolutely necessary.
50% of phones at Whips Cross are down. Pathology labs also severely affected, so we can't get patient blood test results.
We ask patients to only come to our A&Es if absolutely necessary. We do not yet know how long this incident will last, and therefore are cancelling all outpatient, endoscopy, cardiology, and radiology appointments.
Kettle's still working, so we'll be okay.
Around lunchtime on May 12, 2017, computers in some of the largest hospitals in London began to lock up one by one. Data about patients, appointments, scans, inaccessible. But these computers weren't crashing. Instead, doctors or nurses who tried to use a PC were met with this message. Oops, your files have been encrypted. Many of your documents, photos, videos, databases, and other files are no longer accessible because they have been encrypted. Maybe you are busy looking for a way to recover your files, but do not waste your time. Nobody can recover your files without our decryption service.
Okay, so we don't want to play the whole video because it would take a lot of time. But like I said, it's an 11-minute video that breaks down each of the different groups. And then today, go ahead and go to the next slide. So today, what we're going to be doing is a kind of an abbreviated version of what we would normally do in the classroom. Basically, each group has an indictment. They're charged with putting at risk the lives of millions of people. They basically, by launching a global digital chaos. They've caused thousands to be deprived of critical human necessities, including electricity, transportation, communication, healthcare. And that was one of the biggest ones, is that especially in Britain, lots of different hospitals were just completely shut down and couldn't do anything. So I don't know how many people remember in 2017 the WannaCry virus, but that's kind of what this talks about. Ransomware. Damages were billions of dollars. Transportation was impacted, shipping was impacted, all kinds of stuff. Normally, each group in your class would have 3 defense arguments and 3 prepared statements. But today, just for brevity, because we're not going to have a ton of time, we're going to want each group to create 1 defense argument with supporting facts and 1 prepared statement or question to use against other defendants. So the goal of a group that you're going to be put in is to assign 1 person in your group to create kind of a little Word document or something, basically with a short narrative of your group's defense. Why you think either you did it, like you are the people who should be in trouble, or you're not the ones who did it and somebody else should be in trouble. So there's never going to be a time whenever that your group should take 100% of the blame. Maybe you think that your group is 50% to blame, but a different group, like say, I'm just going to pick an example. This is not really necessarily a number to use. Maybe you're in the Russian sandworm group. You would say, okay, well, we're 40% to blame, but the NSA is 60% to blame because they created the ransomware. And that's perfectly fine. Maybe that's what you want to go with. And so you would have an argument that you write, one defense argument, and this is what it's going to be. And then you prepare one statement or question to use against the other defendants. And that's how our argument's going to go. Show that like this happens in a full day. What we try to do in 20 minutes, normally you're given a full day to do that. Now, what I want to do is each group would get about 5 minutes to discuss what their outcome was from what they found. And then obviously in your classroom, you would want to have civil discussion. You would want to have arguments. But a lot of times you'll find that the students can get kind of heated about this because they might find that they had really kind of interesting discussions about cyber weapons and what should be able to happen with those. So it's pretty interesting. This jury style is kind of like Judge Judy. This trial style is like Judge Judy. There's no attorneys, right? It's just defendants, and they're responding to questions from either the judge or normally there's a jury and there's opposing defendants. So you normally would have 4 teams in your classroom with however many students in your class, and you would pull one student from each of those teams to be on the jury to help the judge to make decisions. And so because we have a small amount of people here, and there was no one here that we could keep out of the breakout rooms to kind of just sit here and not really hear everything going on, there's no jury in this particular day. So just for the brevity of this PD, we're not going to have a jury. So this is a little bit different than what you would normally run in class because we're just trying to give you the general feel of the trial itself. So what we could, if we could get the NSA group to not necessarily present their document, but just tell us what you decided, and then with your speech. And someone did ask me about more documents for this. If you have access to the curricula, you can look at all the different documents, but I will share the Google link. So after this is over, I'm going to share this PowerPoint, but I'm also going to share a link that my Google Drive that has these documents in it, where you can see how extensive this is, because there is a pretty nice document in the teacher's notes about how to set up the trial and the questions to ask as the teacher and things like that. So if we're feeling a little confused today, it's okay. It's just because we're trying to move quickly, but it will show all those kind of questions and help guide you through it. So the other question I got was about exemplars. Like, what have we seen other teachers do, and what have they looked like? I haven't seen any. I'll have to ask if it's possible to see some that we might be able to share as well. And if I can get some, I'll try and do that. So if we can get someone from the NSA equation group to their presenter to present, that would be pretty awesome. And then we can kind of do our argument back and forth. So let me try and pull up the chat. So who was equation group presenter? Who was decided in your group to do the presenting?
Well, I don't think that we really decided who was presenting. We kind of had a late start, as you know, when you jumped in.
Sure.
So we kind of divided, I guess, the resources, and each took one and then discussed from there. So we were still in the middle of discussing pretty much when the timer went off, but we talked about how there was like a loophole, and we didn't really feel that there was a blame per se. The video I was watching talked about that people, one of the problems was people don't necessarily update their computers. So even if there was some kind of fix or whatever, not necessarily everybody was getting that. That's where I was at in the video. I don't know if any of my other group members want to share what they discovered, but we was definitely still in the early discussion process.
Did you discover who created the ransomware?
It was a company called something Blue, I believe, and they found a loophole, if you will, in Microsoft protocol, I think it was saying, that was always there, and they figured out that it would accept like outside attackers, if you will, in the Microsoft product, from what I could
And
read.
so the equation group was storing this
Okay.
this hack essentially. And so knowing that the equation group were the ones that had control of this and they just stored it, how much of the blame would you put on your group per se that you had this hack just in storage that had total access to Microsoft or Windows?
I'd say if you want a number figure, probably 60%.
Okay. And then
I
if
don't
you
know
had
if
to use that
that's
40%, did you find out enough about one of the other groups to be able to put a 40% number on a different group?
I did not, but I do want to share real quick one of the conversations that we had where we were wondering where this fell in the curriculum, because for a beginner there was a lot of terminology and we weren't sure if this was something that they would be able to even investigate at this point, but you would know that better than I.
It is pretty
I just
late.
wanted to share that.
It's like a chapter, I think chapter 8. So it's near the end of the term, like the
Okay.
second
All right.
term. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I don't know if anybody else wants to try to share, but that's what I have.
Okay. I mean that's fine.
All right.
And in fact, we ran a little over, so that's good. If we stop a little early, we can go to the next group.
Okay, thank
Do
you.
we have someone from the shadow brokers who can speak to what happened and what you think your percentage of blame would be for this? Yes, thank you, Amy. I really appreciate that.
Hi, I'll start. So we are, and I'm like just looking at my other screen of the whole case. So it was overall, we thought, as Amy said, it was difficult to get this whole project done, obviously, in 20 minutes, right? It's going to take a couple or so classes. But so our group, we launched a global digital chaos, caused thousands of people to be deprived of power, transportation, communication, medical services, and so on. Businesses lost a lot of money, and it pretty much shattered the world economy. So then now it goes into, and we just started really digging into all the resources after discussing the accusations and the defenses. We definitely feel like we put it out there, but what I don't know yet, I don't know if other members, what they read for their in the resources, but I'm not exactly sure, why we released the chaos that we did.
So I can tell you the shadow brokers, they were responsible for sharing. What they did was they found that the NSA had this tool and they were hiding it, for lack of a better word. For the NSA group had helped in creation and were hiding the tool, the ransomware, and they weren't using it. It was just there in case one day they might need it, right? Shadow brokers found this tool and then just shared it, just said, hey, check out this cool thing we found that can do all this cool stuff. They didn't negatively use it. They just shared it for anybody who might want to use it or for whatever reason. So knowing that is what happened from your particular group, how much blame would you place on yourself if you had to put a number on it?
If you want, I can do that,
Please.
Judy. We had talked about that a little bit. I had almost kind of, with a comparison, I was looking at like guns or weaponry. I mean, you have the people who build the guns, you have the people who distribute them, you have the people who then actually use them. Who gets the blame? I mean, yes, no, we weren't the ones who actually used it, But at the same time, it feels like they basically discovered these things that they knew very well what they could be used for, even though they didn't choose to do that, and just said, okay, yeah, we're going to steal those weapons, or we're going to steal that code, and we're going to put it in the hands of whomever. And yes, let's be honest, the good punch people that are out there probably are not going to use it for a good purpose. I mean, they're going to try and tell you, oh, we had no idea what they were doing. But I mean, maybe it's more of a negligent than it is a, a real purpose, of trying to cause something. But that there's definitely a very significant. I mean, I would put it up over, 50%. I mean, for what's there myself, just you put it, it's like if you go in and you say, oh, they, the military just, created this brand new weapon. Okay, we went in and we stole all of them, and now we're going to go hand them to the local gangbangers down the thing, but we are not going to actually use them for anything. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's
Well,
yeah.
when you use the word
That's my own
stole, it makes
personal
it sound a
thought.
lot worse than found, right?
Well,
I
that
said
too,
found,
yes.
but whenever you say stole, it sounds a lot worse. But yeah, no, you're right. I get it. Yeah, totally. So yeah, I can't disagree. But it's an interesting perspective. And I think what you'll find is that in the classroom, students will have, even within their group, disagreements on what level of maybe some might say 25%. Okay, all they did was just share information, right? So we're just 25% to blame. The people created it, they're definitely 50% to blame. But then to me, that 25% that's left for the people who actually did the bad stuff, that's a small number. So it's interesting. I'm interested to see from the North Korean Lazarus group what they think. So I'm going to go ahead and move then to the North Korean Lazarus group. Can someone from that group well, I know that Tanisha, your partner was traveling on the phone. So can you say anything about the North Korean Lazarus group? About what you think, even if it's just a percentage, what you think they might have? What you might have to say about that? And if you can't, that's fine. If you can't present, then we can move on to the next group.
Sorry, I just picked up my baby. These 12 days. I read it, but I still really did, like I explained to you, didn't get a clear understanding what was expected of me. So I really can't speak.
That okay, and I can say a little bit too. And so this group, they were, I guess, more state backed and state minded, as far as their attacks go. So they were one of the Lazarus group. They made actual attacks, right? They took this tool that was shared online and they did attacks with it. And so I guess it depends on how you feel about it. And if anybody wants to chime in, you're welcome to. They actually use the tool for attacks. And so it's kind of interesting to see what percentage of blame you'd want to place on that. And I think the majority tend to place a higher percentage of blame on people who made actual attacks. The last group, I know there was only one, and then Ben had jumped in. Do you guys want to say something about the Russian sandworm group? Because I know that one is a pretty interesting one to talk about as well. So it'd be interesting to hear from you before we kind of place any blame on the North Korean group.
Go ahead.
Sure.
Mike.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Truthfully, every country has the right to protect its citizens from outside threats. We believe that Ukraine belongs to us, and at this moment, the Ukraine people are our enemy. And we use the exploit in their accounting software, MEDOC, that only Ukraine uses. We didn't intend any other country to be infected or affected by the exploit that we learned from the Americans. The NSA had this exploit. The shadow brokers shared the information out to the world. Why would we use the tool if it was going to be used against us anyways? We have the right to protect our homeland. Nearly, if not all, first world countries have cyber defense and cyber offensive teams. We learned by watching Israel and America attack Iran nuclear power plants over a decade ago. that countries can use exploits to gain access to critical infrastructure. The Americans wrote the playbook. We're just reading the footnotes.
I feel like there's a quote, right? Is that a quote from somewhere about the Americans write the playbook?
No, just I'm an English major as well, so just using it in my toolbox.
Oh, that's good. So now based on the percentage system that we've used so far, how much percentage would you place on yourself versus another group?
0%.
As
Absolute 0%.
Okay, so if I told you you weren't allowed to have a 0%, what would you say?
Yeah, like 1 or 2%.
Okay, interesting. So what's interesting is that
Innocent, Your Honor.
is it right? What's interesting is that if you look into something called NotPetya, I think you would have seen quite a bit of that in your research. NotPetya was another massive ransomware that really attacked Ukraine, and it kind of brought all of the Ukraine conflict into light because it spilled over here in America, and that's what had kind of started the conflict between Russia and Ukraine coming onto the national forefront, I guess. And obviously, you know what's happened in the last year or so, but a lot of that digitally we didn't really hear about until 2016, 2017, when all this was really going on. So it's interesting. I hope this has been a little bit enlightening. Like I said, all this data is in the. I'm gonna stop my share here, and I'm gonna take you to the website. All of this data is in, not data, but all the Oh, Ben, you said you wanted to share the vote. Can you open that right quick? We'll do that before we move on to the Q&A.
Okay, so this is an example of a tool you can use. This comes from a website called Slido, which allows you to do interactivity in your classes. So if you guys want to go to slido.com and enter that code, or if you want to scan that QR code with your phone, it'll take you to a page where you can vote on the result of this here. So I'll give you a minute here and it'll show up in the corner how many people have voted on the outcome. And I'll do the same. Just use my phone here to scan this QR code. Like one person has voted so far. We'll wait till we get a few more in and then we'll display the results. Who was the winner? 3 have. Adam, did you vote yet?
I did. Yeah, it was pretty easy. First time I've ever used it.
Okay. All right, we've got 5. Wait till we get a couple more. So this add-in is free at slido.com. It's relatively easy to use. And then once you have it, then you can do like this and you can see interactively what the result was. So it looks like Mark took it home.
Go Russia.
So what I wanted to show you is if I can share again let me grab the share. So if I'm going to go to our website, our Canvas page, which you can get to by going to cyber.org, and then there's a link at the top that'll take you to the Canvas page. I'm going to go, you can go to middle or high school because this course overlaps in middle school and high school. And then you just go to Intro to Cybersecurity. When you originally pull it up, it gives you the tiles for the grade bands. And when you click in the grade band, because this one overlaps, it appears in both middle school and high school. And then here you can either Control F and find it, or you can scroll down. I'm going pretty fast here, but all the way down to here. So Unit 8, at the end of Unit 8 is Cyber Weapons. And in Cyber Weapons is the Trial of Eternal Blue. So there's a lesson plan, which gives you everything you need for this particular lesson. To kind of tell you like over time, like how much time it'll take, 3 to 4 class periods. The instructions, it talks about going through the activity, day 1 and 2. You'll go through it. You'll explain what we're going to be doing. There's a deliverable that's going to be needed. Then it talks about the lesson guides. And then if we go back, the lesson guide itself, excuse me. This talks about the suggested grade levels, the guiding question for who should be held accountable when a cyber weapon spreads across the globe. And so that's kind of what we got into with our presentations just now. And then it walks you through each slide. So slide 1 is the intro slide. There's only 4 slides, excuse me, which we kind of saw and were they were modified slightly. But it also tells you about the sections of the video where, and at each section, they talk about the different groups. And then it tells you about the trial and how the trial format is, how to organize it. The other thing I want to show you is here are the instructions which the teacher would need. There's a timeline, and then they show you the resources for each of those groups. So the instructions is the one that some of you were asking about. Talks about the objective. Maybe you would need construction paper and colored markers for making name cards. Like, if you're having an actual trial on the tables, it look kind of cool to have that. You need the materials, which are those videos, and then a timeline, which talks about how this happened and over the amount of time it happened, which I can open that too. And the steps are like day 1, there's a PowerPoint where you tell them about the trial. You show them the video, and then it talks about the trial format, explain them what you're going to do, which is what I had showed you guys. And then you list the 4 groups. And then there's the research step, which is where each group reads their indictment document and then goes through all the information. And they're provided with their documents, which is what you were provided with. And then they prepare their deliverables, which each group writes their document as a short narrative. And then they would do 3 defense arguments and 3 prepared statements, as opposed to the 1 that we did. And then it talks about the trial itself. If you have a short class, you can change this a little bit. Obviously, you would not get each one of the students to go as far as each group. Maybe you might just split it over 2 days. And if possible, you can organize your room this way, allow them to prep, and then take a volunteer from a group to be in the jury and make sure they're going to be neutral, kind of like you were in a real trial. And then it tells you how to break down the trial and then have an opinion poll, things like that. So it's pretty well thought out. But like somebody had asked, I would like to get some exemplars for what people have had and how I can kind of show that to you. So I have to see what I can find as far as having that. Let me go back to sharing my screen. Oh, Ben, it looks like Ben's sharing. Never mind. So now it brings us to the Q&A time. I tell you what, before we do that, I do thank everybody for coming. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording because I know some people aren't comfortable answering questions when we do Q&A. So I'm going to stop the recording here.